Hey, one of our sponsors today is Manukora Honey. Really, the best reason ever to get a sore throat is it's getting colder. And again, this is a great time to be drinking maybe some hot tea, maybe hot lemon with some honey, but not just any ordinary honey. Manukora makes Manuka honey. It is a single origin honey that comes from New Zealand. The bees feed only on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree. So they make honey that is completely different from any type of honey you have ever tried before. It has the consistency almost of caramel. It almost tastes like caramel, but honey, it's almost impossible really to do it justice in explaining it, but it's creamy and it's got a complex taste, and you use it like you would any other honey. But in addition to its taste being amazing and completely different than your average honey, it is super rich in antioxidants and prebiotics. It is 100 times more so than regular honey. On top of that, it contains an antibacterial compound called MGO that can be found exclusively in Manuka honey. So the bottom line is these nutrients really support your optimal immune and digestive health, and it is incredibly delicious. It's great on honey. It's great on yogurt. It's great with cereal. It's great on peanut butter and toast, or just toast alone. I mean, it is delicious in any type of way. I've got myself a couple of jars of the MGO 850 plus Manuka honey. That's their best-selling honey. The MGO is literally the density of the antibacterial compound that's in it. This stuff like melts in your mouth. I will eat it right out of the bottle. I will eat it in any type of way possible, frankly. And they've got honey packs, compostable little honey sticks that you can take with you as well. My kids love it. It's delicious. If you head to manukora.com/majority, you can get $25 off their starter kit, which comes with the MGO 850 plus Manuka honey, plus a free travel pack of the honey sticks, and a free wooden spoon that you obviously dig the honey out of the bottle with, and a free guidebook. They've got the jar, they've got the squeeze bottle, but I'm telling you, great for kids going to school with the extra pack of compostable honey sticks, or just when you're on the go. Sweeten your tea when you're out, whatever it is. You can bring them when you're on traveling, or you need a quick snack running errands. They're a great energy boost, and they're delicious. That's Manukora, MANUKORA.com/majority. Get $25 off your starter kit. This is the ultimate honey. Indulge and try some honey with superpowers from Manukora. And now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dave Weigel, national correspondent for Semafor, will be here on what the Iowa Republican primary results mean and what's happening as we speak in New Hampshire. Also on the program, Iran strikes targets in Iraq and Syria. Houthis fire on American civilian ship. The proxy war and the regional war heats up. And with at least 24,000 civilians killed by Israel, 3 UN agencies warn that Gaza is on the brink of widespread famine and disease. This while hundreds of thousands of protesters in the U.S. and around the globe over the weekend protested Israeli killing assault on civilians in Gaza. White House National Secretary spokesperson says U.S. has told the Israelis now is the time to scale it back. Back in this country, speaking of scaling it back, Vivek rhymes like cake Ramaswamy will not see you on the trail after all. He has exited the campaign stage. Right, there you go. Meanwhile, Joe Biden campaign raises $97 million last quarter. The House and Senate unveil a stopgap funding legislation to hold over to the next stopgap spending legislation. Texas blocks the Border Patrol from saving 3 ultimately drowned migrants, 1 woman and 2 children. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is Monday. And Emma is, she's sick. We're not quite sure what it is that she has. Thinks it could be a stomach virus. There's so many things going around now. In addition to, and just as folks, as a warning, at the very least in New York City, it's very difficult to find data these days. But wastewater levels have been through the roof, which is these days one of the only sort of like decent indicators of just how much COVID is out there. And I can tell you in New York City, almost everyone I know knows somebody who has COVID right now. And I went to go see some comedy last night, wore a mask. It's not a bad thing to do when you're in close quarters, at least. I've been wearing it on the subway for the most part, nonstop. Occasionally I got sloppy and forgot to bring my mask somewhere. But be careful. It is all over the place right now, particularly in the wake, I think, of like, Christmas break, everybody traveling around.
Yeah. New Year's.
The next, month, I think, is going to be rough with it. So be careful. It is not a good thing to get over and over again. But I've known people who's gotten RSV and flu. Sometimes the vaccine prevents you from getting the flu. Sometimes all it does is it mitigates how dangerous it can be. Same with the COVID shot. I think they have an RSV vaccine, although I'm not sure about that. But so take care of yourselves. All right, let's turn to Iowa. We're going to talk to Dave Weigel about this, but at the end of the day, it could not have gone better for Donald Trump. We will play some clips. Maybe we'll even play his speech, although his speech, the most interesting thing about Donald Trump's speech was that he was as calm and as gracious as you will see Donald Trump, and clearly aware of like the results last night were a clear indication to him. And I think Weigel will support this. He is now basically running in the general election. And he is able to make this pivot. Just the other day, he said the 2020 election was actually real or whatever it was. 65% of voters going into Iowa, these are all Republicans, low turnout. We'll talk more about with Weigel, but 65% of them did not think that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Take that for how you will.
Diversity of thought.
But let's look at some of the grand predictions that have fallen short. Let's tune into Dave Rubin, who the amazing thing about Dave Rubin is I don't think there's ever been a time where he's predicted anything and wasn't 180 degrees wrong.
Look, I am still hopeful for the presidential election, as I have said, and I know no one else in conventional wisdom is saying it. I don't know why Kim Reynolds, a super popular governor of Iowa, decided to throw in with a guy that we're supposed to believe is 50 points down, who just went to all 99 counties and everything else in Iowa. I think Iowa is going to surprise people. I really do.
And he, of course, is talking about he cannot let go of his Ron DeSantis fandom, because I mean, he literally moved down there because he thought he had an in with DeSantis and he thought this was going to be great. Now, DeSantis did come in second place, which is actually almost better than some people expected, because Haley momentum was really growing. But what DeSantis coming in second place does is it basically ensures that Donald Trump will be the nominee, going from like 92% assuredness to like 99% assuredness. But here is a very nice young man in Iowa who is recognizing Ron DeSantis's work in Iowa just the other day.
What? Nothing's going to stop us.
Real quick, before we get started, thank you, everyone. Governor DeSantis, I want to present to you this participation trophy. Now, probably not going to win the election, right? But we're proud of you for trying. There you go.
Trophy. Sorry, buddy.
I mean,
Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
He's special, he's unique, and he's our little snowflake. Thank you. Here you go.
I love how the security comes, pulls him away. That, of course, is Davram from the Good Liars. But you know, if you wanted to wonder, like, you know, why didn't DeSantis ever catch on? You can see the seething anger that guy has, and just the complete lack of sense of humor. And he literally grabs his wife and sticks her in between Davram and himself. Will you just put that back up? I mean, it really is sort of fascinating. It's sort of like he's both ill-tempered, awkward socially, and seems to be terrified. Like, if you watch, he says, I don't need a thing. Oh, she steps in to protect him. That's what it is. She's going to defend him. Yeah, there. Look at that. She stands in there. He hides behind her, and then she's like, security? Hello? That is impressive. I don't do a participatory.
What a big boy.
Yeah, he really showed that guy. But there it is. Ron DeSantis coming in second. We'll talk more about this with Weigel. But again, the only possible threat to Donald Trump. Now, of course, I'm not discounting the idea that, well, I don't think he's going to go to prison, but he could. I mean, health is one never knows. But the only possible threat to Donald Trump would have been if there was a single candidate that he was running against. And through the first couple of primaries. Like, if Nikki Haley could have cleared the field starting in Iowa, but DeSantis is expecting to lose in New Hampshire. Everybody's expecting him to lose. So they're going to go, and then South Carolina is Haley's home state. So that he gets a pass. So they may just jump ahead and play for the subsequent primaries in South Carolina. But I don't want to steal Dave Weigel's thunder. We'll talk to him about that in a moment. But the idea that DeSantis and Haley will split the vote means that there's absolutely no chance. Now, if you look at the numbers as it were in Iowa, and again, their turnout was way down, and a big part of that was because the weather was horrible. But if you look at their numbers, Trump won 51%. If Vivek and Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis you add up all of their votes, and not a single person defects to Trump if their candidate drops out, and they all go to one of those three, they still don't win. And Republican primaries are more so than Democratic ones, winner take all. So keep that in mind. If you had any hope for something different, I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Sorry, Dave.
Dave Weigel will be here in just a moment.
I mean, Dave Rubin.
Oh, Dave Rubin, yeah. He really built his life around Ron DeSantis' success. And now Ron DeSantis is going to be basically working as like some type of like, corporate PR guy or something. Maybe, I don't know.
Imagine Ron DeSantis like coming to Dave Rubin looking for a job. Like, come on, put me on.
There's no doubt in my mind that Dave Rubin is going to go, Ron, maybe you should, like, I could hire you.
Yeah.
According to the CDC, fewer men than women meet the minimum daily intake recommendations for fruits and vegetables. That does not surprise me. Also, men are more likely to overvalue exercise and undervalue nutrition. You are what you eat. Now, the best case scenario, you are getting all of your vitamins from fruit and vegetables, and everybody in this office, at least, knows that's impossible. So enter Ritual. It is a multivitamin scientifically developed for men to help fill nutrient gaps in their diets. For me, my doctor kept telling me for years, take a multivitamin. You're short on vitamin D, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't do it. Well, basically what happened was I would buy a bottle I would go from the doctor's office to the pharmacy, buy a bottle of, knowing nothing about it, buy a bottle of vitamins, and then it would run out and that would be the end. The beauty of Ritual is twofold. One is it's on a schedule. So once you start the habit, you don't break it. It's easy to maintain, which is so important. And the other is the way that Ritual is, tracks what's in their products, where you're getting the ingredients from. Ritual's a science-backed multivitamin. They've got it for men 18 and over, including men for near senior age of mine. It's high quality, and here's the thing: it is traceable. The ingredients are traceable in clean, bioavailable forms. Has 10 key nutrients in 2 delayed release capsules per day designed to dissolve later in the small intestine, which is the optimal place to absorb nutrients. It's gentle on an empty stomach. They put a little mint thing in every bottle, so your multivitamins are not unenjoyable to take. It is rigorously tested and validated by third parties for allergens, microbes, and heavy metals. That is a big deal because a lot of times you don't know where you're getting your ingredients, and there are certain parts of the world where they have less regulation than others, and you don't want to get your vitamins from there. Ritual multivitamins are vegan, non-GMO, project verified. They are gluten and major allergen-free, certified B Corp, and made traceable. Essential for Men is a quality multivitamin from a company you can actually trust. Get 40% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/majority. This offer is only available through January 31st. So you got about 2 weeks. Start Ritual or add Essential for Men to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/majority. Ritual.com/majority for 40% off. That'll be in the podcast and YouTube links as well. Also, want to thank our next sponsor, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this program and my breakfast. Something like, 4 times a week. What is Magic Spoon? It is a cereal that will remind you of your favorite childhood cereals that taste great. But in this instance, each serving contains 0 grams of sugar. 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, 4 to 5 grams of net carbs per serving. Magic Spoon is keto friendly. It is gluten free. It is grain free. It is soy free. And it's a great way to relive those moments watching your favorite cartoons. Plus, it's 140 calories per serving. And it's something you give to your kids. You don't feel bad about it. They got multiple flavors. My favorite, longtime listeners will know, is the cocoa and the peanut butter and the cinnamon roll. But they got fruity. They got frosted, blueberry muffin, maple waffle, honey nut, which is actually also up there for me, birthday cake, and chocolate chip cookie. And now Magic Spoon also offers treats. Perfect for on-the-go snacks. Great to put in your kid's lunchbox. They're just like the marshmallow treats you had as a kid, except for in this instance, only 1 gram of sugar and 1 to 2 grams of net carbs. They are packed with 11 grams of protein per bar. Treats come in 2 flavors, marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. Check it out. I can tell you from experience, both the marshmallow and the chocolatey peanut butter taste as good as it sounds. Head to magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Grab a custom bundle of cereal. Try the magic for yourself. Don't forget to add their delicious treats for on the go. Be sure to use our promo code Majority Report at checkout, and you will save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, start the new year off right with a delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Use the code Majority Report, save $5. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode and my breakfast. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Dave Weigel. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Dave Weigel. He is the national correspondent, political correspondent for Semafor. Dave, Emma is sick today, so she's going to miss this, sadly. But as national political correspondent, what time were you on an airplane last night?
So I actually left Iowa before the caucuses were over, and yet I was a little bit pompous about the decision by every network to call this while people were still voting. We have had pretty decisive Iowa caucus results before, but nobody doubted that Trump was going to win this thing. And the bet that we made at Semafor is we had some folks in Iowa. I came here to get set up and explain what was going to happen in New Hampshire, because really, had Nikki Haley come in a huge surging second and people been surprised by that, that would have been a story for New Hampshire. Had what happened in reality, which is DeSantis coming in a poor second but ahead of Haley, that's also going to affect New Hampshire. I mean, as I'm talking to you, DeSantis's message is, I'm going to commit to both debates in the state, and it's time for Haley to do the same thing. So I knew it would get messy, but I knew it would get messy in New Hampshire, not Iowa.
Now, my experience has always been that the story is always that Iowa, impacts New Hampshire, but it seems like that's not the case. I mean, and maybe you do this. You're a professional at this, so you would have a better sense. But in my recollection, it's not really predictive. I mean, in terms of what happens in New Hampshire, is that generally true?
It isn't, but I can get into the reason why it isn't, and then the reason why it was interesting.
Okay.
Sorry. It isn't predictive. So Iowa is one of the last caucuses, really. A lot of states have given up on these things and gone to primaries. So it is a more engaged electorate. There's not as many people who are just fair weather. Oh, there's a primary. I saw on TV. I'm going to go vote today or send a mail-in ballot. It's a more intense group of people. It's a more religious electorate. Although lower this year is about 51% evangelicals, down from 2/3 in 2016. It doesn't look like New Hampshire very much. New Hampshire is much more secular. New Hampshire, most I say not most, the plurality of voters are not registered with a party, which means they can show up and vote for either party in a primary. And that leads to, for John McCain or for Mitt Romney in 2012, the candidate who seems less right-wing often benefits. So that's the difference. What we learned in Iowa, though, is that Trump's movement is better at turning people out than the other candidates are, and the suburbs and the kind of college-educated voters who could make Nikki Haley competitive, they really didn't turn out very much in Iowa. She did not have something that looked like it was happening if you were only spending your time in Iowa City or in Des Moines. She did well enough to win one county by one vote, Johnson County, where the University of Iowa is. But if you compare, maybe we'll get more into this, but if you compare the results 2016 and even 2012, there were more white working class voters in rural counties turning out relatively than voters in the suburbs. And that's, if there is a path to beat Trump in New Hampshire, you're going to get a lot of suburban voters who maybe voted Republican all the way until Trump came along and then became Clinton and Biden voters. You want them to turn out and vote for Haley, and they really didn't in Iowa. It was pretty paltry. I mean, I mentioned Johnson County. That's where the University of Iowa is, Iowa City. It's grown a lot since 2012. It's added 20,000 people. You can, if you have not been there, you can imagine what a college town looks like and who votes there. From 2012 to 2024, 1,000 fewer Republicans turned out in those caucuses. So,
wow.
What if that happens in New Hampshire? You could say this race is over already. If this happens in New Hampshire and people, even in kind of liberal suburban towns, do not bother voting for Haley, it's very much over.
Okay. All right. So there's two ways to assess this in terms of, let's leave that, like what happens forward in a minute. And, is there any way, I mean, my understanding is that the weather was really bad. That's what everybody was saying on television.
It really was.
Bad. But they got almost like not even 2/3. It seemed like they had 60% of the turnout that they had in 2016 come out, which is surprising to me. I mean, unless the weather was that bad, I guess. But you say there was less evangelicals that came out. And I wonder, putting aside the dynamics of the Republican race, because I think the big thing to come out of it is that, like, Donald Trump won sort of ×2 insofar as he not only won Iowa, but he also sort of ensured that there wasn't going to be a single candidate against him coming out of Iowa, and that the race was going to go for another 4 or 5 primaries at least. But with that said, is there anything to be garnered from this turnout and the nature of the turnout as to, like, measure Republican enthusiasm or whether people are turning out? Like, when you tell me that people in the suburbs weren't bothering to come out, even for Haley, it sounds to me like Republican suburban voters don't think there's any way to stop Trump, and they're just not that interested.
Yeah, that was the case in Iowa. And if you were not, you saw a report on polling in the state about how Trump was up 25 to 30 points. And if you cared enough to go see Vivek or DeSantis in person, they would tell you that the polls are fake and wrong, yada, yada. But they weren't. People got the sense that nobody was getting a lot of traction against Trump. You probably found this in real life. If you talk to somebody who's not following the primary that closely, they hear about Trump. They don't know a lot about the other candidates. So there is more of a sense of competition in New Hampshire. There is a belief here that it is close. The polling says it is. high single digit race at the best, with Trump ahead, Nikki Haley behind, and Chris Christie dropped out. So the assumption is, I think not crazy, that Chris Christie's voters who cannot stand Trump, that was the entire point of the Chris Christie campaign, might say, okay, Haley looks like she could beat her. This happens in New Hampshire. There are tens of thousands of voters who didn't know who Amy Klobuchar was, and then she came fifth in Iowa, but she had a speech pretty early it sounds like I'm being patronizing, but like she had a speech early on caucus night. She got some buzz. She came to New Hampshire. Within a week, she was a credible candidate who came a very good third place in New Hampshire. So things can move here. That's the idea. But you're right. If you were talking to Republicans, as I was 2 days before the caucuses, hours before the caucuses, the scenario they wanted was Trump under 50%, Haley in second percent. Therefore, they can go ahead and have a two-person race here. It didn't happen. I think it'd be easier to put that together in New Hampshire. I do think the weather affected things. I will say, though, when I was gassing up my car before I left, it was at a Come and Go, one of the beautifully named Iowa gas station chains. There's nothing funny about. And the guy next to me got out of his car in negative 18 weather, wearing shorts, sneakers, and like a thin Patagonia puffy jacket. Not one of the big ones, not one of the Canada Goose ones where you look like you're on the surface of the moon. Yeah, but he came from working out, walked into negative 20-degree weather, got some stuff at the gas station pumped, and I didn't see him, shivering or anything. So the Iowans had the ability to go out into this if they wanted. Also, the caucuses are not outside; they were inside where there were heaters. Right. So you just didn't see. I think you get more of a sense in New Hampshire that people think we can actually make a difference. It's warmer. I mean, it's 25 degrees, which felt like South Beach to me today. But you saw there are huge limits to that, and they're just not that many people who vote in a Republican primary who think they can slow Trump down. Not right now.
How disaffected are those people? Did you get a sense of that? I mean, I got somebody on the IM saying Iowa is just like bad weather doesn't even do it justice. But I mean, did you get the sense? Did you get the sense that, let's say it was, I mean, and I don't know how you predict this. I don't know how you assess this, but I'll ask you anyways. If it was, 25 degrees in Iowa or 30 degrees, to lose 40% of the attendance from 2016, I mean, I could see the weather doing 25% and then maybe 10% going like, it's in the bag anyways. But if you think it's in the bag anyways, you would probably be either you would be pretty polarized about Trump, I would imagine. And you would be like, we've got to stop him. And I'm going to do it anyways. I mean, that just seems like a big drop off to me.
Yeah, it does. The Haley campaign, any reporter who covers it will tell you, is just not very open about its strategy. Even if you get them talking on background off the record, they really don't want to say how they were targeting, what their universe was. This might be an indictment of reporters that we should know more. But my point being that they're not very talkative about what they were trying to do and what they couldn't do. And no campaign was admitting, oh, we actually had all this stuff planned and we had to cancel it. They were confident that they had DeSantis and Trump, and from Haley, it was sort of Americans' Prosperity, the Koch group's ground game. They said, okay, we've done enough where people are aware and we're calling them and they can come out. They had all contacted more than enough voters to push that up. So hypothetically, had it been a 40-degree day, could more people have come out to vote for Haley? I think so, but I think more people could have come out to vote for Trump. I mean, one thing I'm including in our analysis as it goes up is if you look at, I looked at the counties that Trump flipped from Obama. They went for Obama in 2012. They went for Trump in 2016, and he won them again in 2020. He didn't win them all in the caucuses in 2016, but those are the places where it's okay. White guys without college degrees, working class, those people weren't necessarily Republicans, and now they like Trump. In those, the turnout was still down from 2016, but it was down by less than the rest of the state compared to 2012, which was a similar turnout, like 120,000 people. This is going to be like 112. Compared to 2012, turnout in those counties was up. I mean, there were hundreds more people voting, and it was way down. I was saying before, down big around Des Moines, down big around Cedar Rapids. Just the places. So if you extrapolate, who would have come out if it was warmer? I can see if all the votes lifted, there just were more people interested in supporting Trump again than interested in supporting in supporting Haley. And I should add, because I'm not trying to spin just for DeSantis here. This is the DeSantis campaign that points this out the most, that by the end, between AFP and her super PAC and all those groups supporting her, she was on the air more than anybody else. You saw Nikki Haley's ads in her message. And she's going to end up with half as many votes as Marco Rubio got when he lost to Trump in 2016. I mean, the energy was not there, and not enough to power through bad weather. But even I think with good weather, I've seen campaigns that were clicking. I mean, the thing I can add to this, as being from on the ground there, I was comparing my notes from 8 years ago and from 12 years ago, which were harder to find, about who had what crowds. And the final days in 2012, you could see Santorum events where people were packed out the door, hundreds of people. In the final days of 2016, you could see Rubio's crowds. He'd be in a suburb and get 350 people. Haley was getting in the same places 90 people or so. That, I think, was shrunk by the weather. I'm pretty confident more people would have made the trip if they could, if it wasn't so cold. But I remember covering Barack Obama in 2008, and he'd have to delay events because the crowds were so big that they couldn't pack everybody into them on time. They would have to delay by half an hour. That's just not happening. There's just not the same enthusiasm for these candidates as much as they could see it in Iowa. It just wasn't there.
And is it worth trying to extrapolate to the general from that, or is that just a fool's errand?
It would be awesome if you could extrapolate anything from one Iowa caucus, so I could go home. Why I want to go home? I'm going to have a fun time here.
Come on, you're having fun. Stop it. My understanding is that come and goes. My understanding that come and goes are actually spelled K-U-M and G-O. Is that correct?
Yes, you don't have to censor them when you go with them, and they're great. I mean, Iowa gas stations are great. If you've never been there, but I do think from talking to Democrats, they did notice that in 2016, Democrats kind of slept on the fact that not all of them, but if you were talking to the Hillary campaign, you'd say, hey, it looks like 40,000 more Republicans turned out in this race, and they all went for Trump. And they'd say, well, we as the general, yada, yada. For every 2 Trump voters in a row, for every Trump voter who leaves us, we'll get 2 in the suburbs, that kind of thing. And this is not that. This is with no Democratic race really on the other side. There's just not the same enthusiasm for Trump. That makes sense, I think, not just to Democratic strategists, but to me, because if you look at polling where Trump is doing well, he is a well-known quantity who's not popular. The polling is a reflection of people thinking Biden is old, Biden is presiding over an economy that feels like it was better 4 years ago. I guess Trump, sure. And if you add Kennedy as an option, Kennedy who's most people are not seeing in their lives, and if they do see him, it's usually him saying something like, what was it the other day, that the FBI was right to wiretap him.
He did say that it was okay, that they did, but that is his father and uncle were doing it as a check on the FBI,
right,
in some way.
Yeah. Knowing from the inside. I mean, for example, that's not probably the kitchen table issue everyone's talking about at home, but that's how Democrats see it. Is okay. Obviously, a lot of people are frustrated and they don't like their choices, so they're TBD Trump right now. I think that there's more evidence for that from Iowa. You were not seeing the MAGA movement surge back. You were seeing how it's the biggest thing in the Republican Party, but it's not what it was in 2020. It has lost support in 2020. The exit poll that everyone focused on, I think correctly, result that people focused on was when you ask even Republican caucus goers if they wouldn't vote for Trump if he was convicted, it was about a third say yes. Now, will that change over time? Because there was you could find Republicans who said if he was indicted, he should drop out. And he didn't, and they just stopped caring. But there is a softer Trump vote than there was. There's an even softer, like non-existent enthusiasm for DeSantis and Haley.
Right. And Trump's victory speech, you've followed a lot of these speeches. It felt to me with having DeSantis come in second meant that there's never going to be a single candidate that Trump is running against until deep into the primaries. Even if you added up what Vivek and DeSantis and Haley got, it still would be less than 50%, and Trump would beat that fictional candidate. It sounded like to me that he he started his general election campaign last night in that victory speech. Was that what was your sense of that?
Yeah, that's one thing. Not to argue with everyone in the media, but I like McKay Coppin's piece for The Atlantic. See that I can agree with somebody instead of being disagreeable. That said, hey, everybody, you should check out a Trump rally. He said go to one. I think it's okay if you just watch one on TV and see what he's saying, because he's lost his swerve from 2016 and 2020, but he's also just spends a long time rambling about stuff. He always did, but he'll just get into his problems and stuff that's not relevant to voters. Like the old idea that, yeah, you weren't listening, but Trump was talking about manufacturing and he was talking about the forgotten man. He does less of that now. It is much more about his personal problems. So that pivot, it took a while. I mean, I was watching the speech live to take notes on it, and he starts with a long list of thank yous. He's kind of promising cabinet jobs to people. He's suggesting that the Attorney General of Iowa, who endorsed him, should run for governor. And I was talking with
That's when CNN cut away after the first 5 minutes. We thought like this is like an Oscar speech. It's not even
right. Oh yeah, without a wrap him up button. But like, not to get into everything Trump said, but that's a great example. Cable went from you should witness this entire Trump thing to, oh, Trump started talking about how immigrants are bad. We're going to cut away. All right. Well, like if the actual Trump content is not, even when he's on book, he's wasting a lot more time talking about his personal problems and things that are less inspiring to people. I don't think if you played a Biden speech, some of the times where he's losing focus and saying, anyway, I don't think people would say, I feel more confident about Biden. I do think if you played somebody an entire Trump speech, many would say, oh, that's what he's running on. Oh, okay. Unexpected. And I was mentioning the Attorney General because I was talking to the Democrat who might run for governor in 2026 in Iowa. And he was saying, that's interesting that he's on stage with and endorsing for governor this Attorney General who is kind of famous for taking contraception away from rape victims. Like he's not breaking away from the unpopular parts of the Republican Party. Anyone who wants in the tent will come in the tent. He's on record 1 billion times now saying unpopular things about abortion, or often incoherent things. But Democrats are pretty happy with the tape they're getting from all this stuff. Whereas in at this point in 2016, he was dunking on Jeb Bush in ways that a lot of Democrats thought was pretty fun. He has shaken up his message, even on book when Trump is delivering mostly the speech. He says, I do think in the rest of the media there's a effort to not an effort, but a tendency to cut out the stuff that's kind of rambling because it doesn't make good sound, as we say in the business, and focus. Well, he's on message here. Yeah, like he's also off message. People might notice that how easily he starts talking about his grievances.
Let's talk about going forward. One of the numbers that really also stuck out to me was the number of people who thought the Iowa goers who thought that abortion was the most important issue. Like 50% of them went for DeSantis, and I think it was 25% then Trump. And that to me suggests that Haley has no path. Like she's going to go to New Hampshire, but everybody's going to write off New Hampshire because it's an open primary essentially, and it's like as Haley country as there can be. If she can't win in New Hampshire, it's hard to imagine she can win anywhere. So I don't think people are going to pay attention to that. DeSantis is going to go in. He's going to do those 2 debates if she does them, but that's it. They're going to spend the rest of their time maybe in South Carolina, but it's Nikki Haley's spot. But then the next couple of primaries is where DeSantis goes. And if he's getting the hardcore anti-abortion vote because he made some inroads in questioning Trump's abortion bona fides, and Trump was a little late in sort of embracing. That's going to be helpful for the Democrats, I would imagine, because Trump's going to have to raise the fact that he was responsible for appointing justices who got rid of abortion. But also it means that Nikki Haley has no sort of like path, it feels like to me, to become that primary candidate against him.
Yes, the abortion issue is pretty complicated, and I've been talking a lot, so to uncomplicated. If you live in Iowa, you're an Iowa pro-lifer, what Trump did by appointing his Supreme Court justices made it possible for your state to effectively ban abortion. You have a 6-week ban. And maybe you can care a lot about whether California bans it too. And that's the Lindsey Graham position, the Tim Scott position. But it turns out you didn't care that much. I mean, you're not marching to the polls to vote against Donald Trump because he's not specific about the federal ban he'd do. And it just wasn't as much of an issue in Iowa, which is the place where that might have mattered. I mean, in New Hampshire, it is a more pro-choice state. Even Republicans generally are more pro-choice. I mean, the governor isn't, but the furthest they've done with complete control of the legislature is a 24-week abortion ban. I mean, 24 weeks, if that was in place in Texas, the Kate Cox, the woman who had to flee the state to get a medically necessary abortion, she was not at 24 weeks yet. So
right.
This is a more liberal state on social issues, not really fiscal issues, but social issues. And it's unique in the Republican primary. I mean, Vermont exists. All right, that's about it. There's not many places where you get a Republican electorate that's pretty pro-choice. So yeah, the problem for Haley is, what do? Best case scenario, you have an electorate that is aligned with you in New Hampshire. You win New Hampshire, and I think she would be a big story. The first Republican woman to win the primary, first non-white person to win the New Hampshire. There's a lot of stories you could tell about this, but then she runs into this brick wall in South Carolina, because that is not the South Carolina electorate. The South Carolina electorate, same thing. The abortion is banned effectively because of what Trump did. So if you're an abortion-focused voter, you're fine. If you want specifics, you've got DeSantis. If you don't want any of that stuff, well, you have Haley, but you can't lose your home state and continue. There is no way to do this. There is no way to spin. I still have a path to nomination after losing my home state by 30 points, not just because that's humiliating, but look at the next races. You have Michigan, where Trump is strong after South Carolina. You have Super Tuesday, where there's really, I mentioned Vermont, but everything else. I mean, look at the California electorate. That is a very right-wing MAGA electorate. It's not California hippies. That's the wrong way to view it. If you're a registered Republican in California, you can vote in that primary. You are MAGA at this point. So yeah, she doesn't really have anywhere to go. Would she have somewhere to go if she had a huge surge in Iowa and convinced a bunch of pro-lifers, et cetera, to vote for her? That's kind of like possibly, maybe in another universe, but we live in this universe. She didn't do it, so she just doesn't have enough of a coalition to compete with Trump after New Hampshire.
Is there? All right. So, lastly, is there any? I mean, is there any sort of like? In the course of your reporting, are you picking up anything in terms of like the Democratic electorate, or is it just? Yeah. I mean, there's like 3 states where there's not going to be a primary. It seems like. Do you have a sense of like, as we look to the general, because I really do get the sense that like we are weeks away from everyone just looking to the general at this point.
Yeah, so national Democrats generally are their view of the result is there's a lot of voters, we were talking about that before, who are like, another choice between Trump and Biden, I guess Trump, whatever, and they're not thinking about it. And they think what will happen is once Trump clearly is the nominee, he's going to be back in the center of things. And when he's in the center of things, he's less popular. And I mean, this is issue after issue throughout his presidency and throughout the last campaign. This was the case. If Trump was the focus of things, the things got less popular. The border wall, like abortion policy, foreign policy, everything. And he's also, like we were saying, more erratic and given to just going on weird tangents. One that they focused on last night is he starts talking about his wife attending Rosalind Carter's funeral, and then says, "Oh, Jimmy Carter's the happiest person because just Biden makes him look good." That's a weird thing to say. So he was going to keep saying weird things. Democrats in New Hampshire, remember, the party descheduled the primary. You're not going to get delegates. Biden's not in the ballot. There's a write-in effort to convince people to just write in the president's name so that Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson don't get any bragging rights or even any delegates. And so there are I talked to some today. There's Democrats who are trying to convince people come in and vote for Haley as a spoiler to slow down Trump and to give us a chance of not having to run against him. That's kind of where the local Democrats see this is, okay, Haley didn't do quite well enough where she's coming in with a ton of momentum, but we're still going to try not all the Democrats, but these guys who work, Primary Pivot is the group. These people saying, all right, if you're a New Hampshire Democrat or unaffiliated voter who votes for Democrats, you have a shot, do this. Chris Christie was doing this before the registration deadline, urging Democrats to switch the registration, go independent or Republican, so you could vote for him to slow Trump down. That's how locally they're thinking about it. Nationally, the sense is, no, this is over. We need to get to the point where voters see Donald Trump, the 2024 version, in the news every day and realize they don't want him.
Interesting. All right, one last question, and this is about Capitol Hill. You touched on this a little bit the other day in your Semafor newsletter. The Republicans are sort of one by one losing their majority in the House with resignations and whatnot. They don't seem, also, it seems that Johnson now is like, the whole strategy is going to be, we're not going to pass any immigration bill whatsoever, even as much as the Democrats are sort of like compromising on it. Where does this leave it? Like, I mean, the Democrats sort of like, this is sort of almost like, it reminds me of when Obama tried to, cut Social Security, and the Freedom Caucus back in 2010 wouldn't say yes. And so the Democrats couldn't come out and campaign, they're going to cut Social Security, because it was the Democrats who were willing to offer it. And yet, so this is what's going to happen when the Republicans just use immigration as a bludgeon on Biden, but Biden doesn't want to come out and actually defend immigrants in any way.
Oh, yes. So there's a few issues like this. This is the big one, though. I would say energy policy is the same, where the Biden administration's slowly moving towards a policy that might make that eliminate some of the political problems they see, except it doesn't, because Republicans don't give them credit and Democrats don't like it. And this is one of them. The Republican approach, I hate using they, but I can say a common line you heard from Republicans, Kevin McCarthy would say this, is Democrats want the issue, they don't want a solution. They want the issue of immigration because they can use it against us, and because yada yada, great replacement theory. Side note, that was probably the most memorable thing I saw in Iowa was Vivek Ramaswamy was late to an event, and Steve King, who had endorsed him, just vamped by talking about the great replacement theory for 8 minutes. But that's how they talk about this, and they really are, I think, running down the clock. The expectation from them is in a year and 4 days, Donald Trump is going to be president again. Why should we agree to anything until Donald Trump is president? Why would you take a deal with Joe Biden that you can throw out and say, all right, no deal whatsoever? You saw Stephen Miller, who expects to be back in a Trump administration, saying deportations begin at noon on Inauguration Day. So this is mitigating against any deal, is the sense that Republicans have that we can make this is a loser for Biden. Every day that there's footage of people in New York, migrants living in hotels, we can talk about it. It came up a lot in the trail. I mean, immigration was a top issue in the exit poll, but also every candidate was saying, look at these reports of migrants living in schools in New York. The issue is just great for them. And one, they don't want any compromises that Biden would offer in terms of a path to citizenship. Every Republican in this race, even Nikki Haley, who we just started talking about trying to appeal to Democrats, their position is deport everybody who's here illegally. So if their starting position is deport everybody, and they think they're going to win the election, the cost to them is 11 plus months of people moving into crossing the border and getting asylum, who they can then deport. And is that ideal? Well, no, but it seems like it mostly is making life hell for Eric Adams and for Brandon Johnson and for Karen Bass. So if you are in a cynical mind set, which I usually am, that's the incentives. What would be good for Republicans if there's a deal on immigration and border crossings decrease, asylum seekers decrease, and Biden says, look, I fixed a problem. Well, that's not good for them. And that's how I see this issue. I do see it as driven through the presidential campaign. but they're pretty clear on that. Just like if the worse things are for Biden, no matter what the human cost is, the better they are for us. Yeah.
And I imagine when you're dealing with the Republican electorate, it's people who are not as engaged in this as maybe you would if you were in a Democratic primaries. But is Biden's support, like complete unmitigated support for Israel, and what people are seeing in Gaza, are people talking about that in the Republican primary at all? Are you hearing stuff from like non-Republicans as you go around reporting?
No, it didn't really. The most that came up with Republicans is the Trump argument, which is if he was still president, Israel would be fine, never would have been attacked. And it just kind of folds into, they don't even praise Biden for doing things that they agree with. They say, yeah, but things are worse than they wouldn't have been if he wasn't there. And he does get I'm not saying he should get credit from Democrats. I'm saying he does, but he doesn't get any. I think he gets the DMFI, AIPAC, et cetera, Democrats who have worked to beat people they disagree with. They like his policy. They're not running ads against him, but you see in all the polling, younger voters don't like the way that Biden's handling this. And I've seen, not in Iowa, I've seen Genocide Joe tags, posters in bigger cities. I've seen. Yeah. I think it has become a problem. Not in Iowa, but in polling of Michigan, it's clearly a problem. Voters under 35, and this is if you went to college, you didn't go to college, you're white, you're black, whatever. This is like very well known.
I think it's very much an age. Yeah. People under the age 40 to 35 is across the board. Yeah. It seems to me there's just a much more sensitivity to it. You've only known Netanyahu as, like, for the most part, you've only known Israel as Benjamin Netanyahu's Israel. You've only known it as a country that is perfectly safe. Yes, there are attacks, but a country that is able to defend most attacks and brutally, effectively counterattack, destroy anyone who has attacked it, as it's done in Palestine right now. It is not. If you're a boomer, you remember Golda Meir, you remember the country almost being destroyed. That's not how young people view Israel. Not to get into a whole tangent, I have not seen a place where that would play out for Biden. Now, in New Hampshire, there are Palestinian Americans who live here, Lebanese Americans who live in the state. There is some opposition, but it's really only in Minnesota, Georgia, and Michigan where this is significant. And when you ask Democrats about it, I asked the governor of Minnesota about that a few weeks ago. They just think, yes, we'll get to a point where Trump is the alternative, and if young people see the Trump-Biden choice, at best they will vote for Biden reluctantly. At worst, they're going to stay home or vote for Cornel West. And they're just not really processing, okay, we need to change direction because we're going to lose votes on this. Not so far what I've seen. Dave Weigel, always a pleasure to talk to you. Honestly, having followed your reporting for at least a decade now, I think nobody has a sense of what's happening out there like you do. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for letting me go on and try to explain it. I tried
really
for all my rambles to have facts in them. So thank you.
Really great. Enjoy all your travails across New Hampshire today.
Yes. We're in a snowing, but it's not sub-zero, so I can handle this. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, I hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks again, Dave Weigel, and we'll put a link to your page at Semafor, folks. A great way to get a sense of what's going on out there. Thanks again. All right, folks. Couple other things before we go. We were talking about immigration policy. I want to get into this, and then I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in terms of Gaza. Huge protests in D.C. There were protests in New York this weekend and around the globe. And maybe the Biden administration is starting to feel some pressure, and then maybe they will put pressure on Israel, and that maybe that will have some impact. We'll talk about that in a second, but this story is really disturbing. And again, this is a massive failure, and this is what I was talking about with Weigel. You've got the Senate Democrats trying to make some deal over the border so that they can get the supplemental money for Ukraine and Israel. And then there's a couple other small sort of sundry items in that package. And the Democrats are tacking to the right when it comes to immigration because they think that they can in some way mitigate the move in the country to the right on immigration and mitigate the electoral chances of that, and they can't. And what they're doing is they're not setting themselves up, in my estimation, to be able to respond to Donald Trump on this issue in a way that is going to resonate with the American public. This story, there's two aspects to this. One is it's incredibly horrific and inhumane. And the other is that the Biden administration is just not in a position to highlight this story. They are in a position to highlight this story and make it a campaign issue, but their support for immigration and immigrants, they're so, whether it's a political stance or not, they can't step up and deal with this. CBS News reports a woman and 2 children drowned in the Rio Grande on Friday while trying to enter the U.S. This is near a section of the southern border where the Texas National Guard soldiers prevented and have prevented federal Border Patrol agents from processing and rescuing migrants. So federal officials and a Texas Congressman, Henry Cuellar, I'm no fan of, but he doesn't like the idea that people were almost purposely killed. Do you remember that story? When did we run that Greg Abbott thing where he said we can't shoot it? Did we run that on Thursday?
Yeah.
And Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, was like, we're doing everything we can to deny these people except for shoot them. And if we did, then the DOJ would come after us. I'm not so sure after this. So Texas National Guard soldiers deployed by Greg Abbott would not allow Border Patrol agents to attempt to rescue the migrants. Earlier this week, Texas National Guard soldiers seized control of a public park in Eagle Pass that Border Patrol has been using to hold migrants. And on Friday night, Border Patrol identified 6 migrants in the Rio Grande who were in distress near the park. Agents unsuccessfully attempted to contact state officials about the emergency by phone. Then when the Border Patrol agents went to the park and asked the Texas National Guard to allow them to go and help the migrants, they were denied entry. And the next day, they found that a woman and 2 children drowned. Of those 6, 3 of them drowned. I mean, the idea that the DOJ isn't bringing a case here, the idea that the federal government is just allowing Texas to unconstitutionally take control of this border, and then I think criminally prevented the Border Patrol from going and rescuing these migrants. It's an outrage. And if on top of it being just sort of like a just inhumane and, brutal, and I think criminal, but also the National Democrats are not in a position to sort of like make an issue of this because of their desire to sort of like be seen as not being supportive of immigrant rights. And so there's no way to engage in this issue that the Republican Party is going to be talking about constantly. I mean, expert dog kissers saying Biden needs to call Texas bluff and send federal troops to the border and enforce border policy. I'm not convinced that's wrong. Or what you do is you nationalize those National Guard units. You now say your commander-in-chief is not the governor of Texas. It's the president of the United States. And you're going to stand down. And whoever gave the order to not allow Border Patrol to get in there and rescue these migrants is going to stand trial for manslaughter.
And that would go a ways towards helping the country interpret these things as opposed to just granting the premise every time.
100%. I mean, I hate to frame it in the context of politics, but it's not just a question of like electoral politics.
Constitutional.
It's not just a question of constitutional politics. It is a question of like, how do you convince the American public about policy decisions that we make or that others make? And you make them pay a political price because the Republicans have already announced, essentially, they did it on a call over the weekend. We're not going to do anything in terms of immigration policy whatsoever. We're just going to continue to use it as a way to demagogue. I mean, this is, and the Democrats can't offer any type of response to it. It's just, it's nuts. It's nuts when Henry Cuellar has to be the most reasonable person in any conversation. Really an outrage. Do we have that clip of Kirby on CBS Face the Nation? So like I say, there's been protests in this country around the globe. Iran has struck back in northern Iraq and Syria. The Houthis have sent a missile on a U.S. maritime ship, civilian ship. Didn't do much damage, apparently. But this is not, there's no, it's impossible at this point to even pretend that Biden's unfettered support for Israel is in the best interest of U.S. national security. Never mind the, I don't even have to talk about the sort of like the how morally reprehensible this is and how unjust and how ridiculous. There's an ex-Shin Bet head. I think we've mentioned this guy in the past. Amy Ayalon, who says that this entire assault on Gaza is a waste. It's one thing to go in and try and decapitate the Hamas leadership, but what they're doing to civilians is a complete failure. He says, we Israelis will have security only when they, Palestinians, will have hope. That's the equation. To say the same in military language, you cannot deter anyone, a person or a group, if he believes he has nothing left to lose. He believes in releasing Marwan Brugati. I've brought him up in the past. Brugati has been in jail since 2002, following, I think it was the second Intifada. And he is the most popular Palestinian figure there, one who would beat both Abbas and Haniya, the Hamas leader, in an election. The Israelis, of course, want to put this guy in jail because they don't want a cohesive Palestinian political force. They don't want there to be a cohesive partner to negotiate with, because that undermines Israel's ability to dictate the terms. But it's the only way in which this is going to end, and people are going to get any type of security on either side. here is John Kirby. With all of this said, and pressure mounting in the Senate, you remember Bernie Sanders introduced that 502B resolution from the Foreign Services Act, I think it is, the Foreign Affairs Act, that basically says if we're giving money to a foreign country, we need to get a report from the administration on how that money's being used, if it's being used in accordance with international law. And the administration does not want to have to engage in that, because then they'd have to admit that Israel is, at the very least, on a daily basis, engaged in war crimes. It is a war crime to starve a population. It is a war crime to prevent humanitarian aid to get in there. It is a war crime to do collective punishment. It is a war crime to target civilians in the way they have. And regardless if the minimum of 24,000 civilians that have been killed constitutes genocide in someone's mind, regardless if you think that there's been sufficient evidence of a desire to perform ethnic cleansing, whether it's, Israeli soldiers chanting our job is to cleanse, is to basically deport all of these people and drive them out of Gaza, or whether it's, finance ministers in the Israeli government or other high-placed officials. There have been war crimes here, without a doubt. Multiple war crimes. And the U.S. government is not interested in having to produce that document. So here is John Kirby. I can't even watch this guy half the time, honestly. I just find him so
sleazy.
He is on with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. And we're seeing reporting of this, I think it was in Axios, that the U.S. is getting increasingly frustrated privately. I'll read that story in a bit, but here's Kirby.
As we acknowledged here, it's been 100 days since that Hamas attack on Israel that sparked where we are now. Does the U.S. need to press Israel harder to move into the low-intensity conflict they say they intend to move towards?
I can tell you, and Secretary Blinken just came from the region, that we have been talking to them intensely about a transition to low-intensity operations. We believe it's the right time for that transition, and we're talking to them about doing that. Now, they have done some precursory steps to try to kind of get to that point. They're pulling some troops out. They're relying a little less on airstrikes. But we believe that, look, any military campaign, you go through phases. And the next logical phase here, as they have put pressure on Hamas leadership, is to get to lower-intensity operations, more targeted, more precise raids, less airstrikes. We believe it's time to make that transition, and we have had that conversation with them.
Time to make that transition because it's now a detriment to U.S. national security to be giving them cover for this long?
Because it's the right thing to do in this military campaign against Hamas. They have put pressure on leadership. They have gone after that leadership. They have been able to go after some of the resourcing and infrastructure that Hamas uses to conduct these attacks. We're not saying let your foot up off the gas completely and don't keep going after Hamas. It's still a viable threat. They have every right and responsibility to go after that. It's just that we believe the time is coming here very, very soon for a transition to this lower intensity phase.
Right.
The question was, should we be doing more to pressure them, not be descriptive?
I mean, all the other stuff is just, it's, but simultaneously, somebody's going to Axios, and this is the what they're trying to project, and it's unclear who this is for, because this is not nearly enough for people who care about the issue, and I don't know if they're trying to signal to the Israelis or they're trying to signal to the senators who are starting to say, like, we're going to condition aid, or we're not going to do aid whatsoever. Axios, President Biden and other senior U.S. officials are becoming increasingly frustrated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rejection of most of the administration's recent requests related to the war in Gaza. 4 U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the issue told Axios. Situation sucks and we're stuck. The president's patience is running out, one said. At every juncture, Netanyahu has given Biden the finger. This is Chris Van Hollen told Axios. He is a senator from Maryland. They're pleading with the Netanyahu coalition, but getting slapped in the face over and over again, as if there is no leverage here. Or as if they have tried, they've run out of things to do.
Also, like, Bibi's been giving the party the finger since before I had this job. Like, Netanyahu coming to talk to Congress because the Republicans wanted him there. Like, yeah, this is what they do. That finger's been extended for a decade.
It really is. This is either, and they're not mutually exclusive. This is both a twisted ideological stance by the administration and an abject failure of exerting U.S. soft power. There's just no way. This is just a failure. Biden hasn't spoken to Netanyahu in 20 days since a December 23rd call in which a frustrated Biden ended with the words, "This conversation is over." And Netanyahu's, I imagine, was like, okay, just send the money. Before Biden hung up, Netanyahu had rejected his request that Israel release the Palestinian tax revenues it's withholding. It's Smotrach that is holding those. Same guy who basically says we're going to have all these people self-deport. Biden and his advisors, in addition to the tax revenue, believe Israel isn't doing enough to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. They're also frustrated by Netanyahu's unwillingness to seriously discuss plans for the day after the war and his rejection of the U.S. plan for reform Palestinian Authority. U.S. officials are now growing increasingly concerned that Israel won't meet its timetable to transition. And if Israel doesn't significantly scale down its operations in Gaza, there's no timeline here. It will likely become increasingly difficult for Biden to maintain the same level of support for Israel's military campaign. Like, who is this for? Like, what is the fear that the Biden administration has in tiptoeing around? I mean, and I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt that that's what it is, as opposed to just their ideological relentlessness. But like either they recognize the political cost and the cost of basically the U.S. national security interests, or they don't. And if they do, then why are they tiptoeing around like this? And if they don't, why bother leaking this stuff to Axios? It's just so poorly done. And again, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. It's just so poorly done on both sides. And meanwhile, 3 UN agency chiefs yesterday, death toll now over 24,000. This is as reported by the AP. In Gaza. It is undoubtedly higher than that. There's just no means in which to. Even Cindy McCain, for God's sakes. Cindy McCain, married to bomb Iran, John McCain. People in Gaza risk dying of hunger just miles from trucks filled with food. Every hour lost puts countless lives at risk. Is it the same Cindy McCain? Can you look that up? WFP Executive Director Cindy McCain?
That's her, yep.
I mean, the intensity of the bloodlust in that family. And she's saying this is just insane. That's the World Food Program, UNICEF, and the World Health Organization say more trucks need to be allowed in each day. New entry routes need to be opened up to Gaza. Aid workers and those seeking aid must be allowed to move around safely. This is not like this is not. They're not mentioning Israel by name, but the sort of unspoken handle on each one of these needs and requests is Israel needs to allow more trucks in each day. Israel needs to allow for new entry routes to be opened in Gaza. Israel needs to let aid workers and those seeking aid be allowed to move around safely. And it is Israel who's preventing all of this. This is a war crime. It's a war crime. There are images of kids having amputations a mile from a hospital that's either being destroyed or under assault from Israel.
This is video from Rami Abdul, who's with the Med Monitor, European Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor of the Gaza beach. Starvation has reached unprecedented levels. Thousands in western Gaza City rushed out upon hearing of a food truck's arrival, only to be fired upon by the Israeli army. I mean, the scale of horror.
It's just unbelievable. And you have even a former head of Shin Bet saying there's no Israel is getting no advantage of this. This is just pure bloodlust. Pure bloodlust. It really is just horrible.
At least John Kirby said there's been precursory steps taken, so good for that.
Here is, and one of the other things, we're up about 110,000 journalists killed in Gaza. I don't know how many more of their families. This guy, Wael al-Dadua, I may be mispronouncing his name. He was on with Ayman Molinari. And he's lost multiple kids, I think it is now, to Israeli bombing. They've been undoubtedly targeting this guy. He still goes on. Here he is on...
he lost his 15-year-old son, 7-year-old daughter, and grandson in airstrikes. That was updated 2 days ago.
Here he is on the Ayman show on MSNBC. This is Saturday.
Unfortunately, we feel that there is some degree of solidarity, support, and help. But from our point of view, at least, and because it's us who are paying this painful price, we do not feel that support is enough, is sufficient, or amounts to the level of the high cost we are paying. I told you a little while ago that 106 Palestinian journalists have become martyrs as a result of Israeli attacks in less than 3 months. This is frightening and has never happened in other wars, which lasted 20 years, maybe according to my knowledge. Yet what happened vis-a-vis those events? Maybe a statement here, a statement there, some efforts, nothing more. This pains us, actually. Many Palestinian journalists feel that they were let down, left alone to face this massacre and this carnage. And the world did not look at the bigger picture, did not really stand by us as we would have liked. We feel that we are being killed twice, once by the bombs and once by this silence, this shy way of expressing support.
Just horrific. And it's very hard to believe that this is all just sort of coincidental, that they just coincidentally hit all of these journalists. Remember, the Israeli government has already claimed that they have tens of thousands of phone numbers and geolocations, and that they're able to send voicemails and text messages to people living in specific areas, down to the household. You need to get out. You need to get out of the building. You need to get out of this. The idea that they have this technology, but it's just a coincidence that this many reporters have died. I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
I mean, I talked with Nando Villa, who did a podcast documentary on the Pegasus project and the NSO group, which were specifically journalists spying technology and exports by Israel.
All right. Well, that's the fun stuff for today. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. We'll take your phone calls going in a little bit late. It's Tuesday. I know I said apparently at the beginning of the show that it was Monday. It's Tuesday. I'm sorry. Maybe we can put a little chyron on the video and cut in
fake news.
Matt just going Tuesday.
Soon AI will have a feature where it can automatically just fix any mistakes like that.
There you go. Folks, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show, free of commercials, you also get the fun half. We could use your support. Membership is going to be a key focus for us in 2024. Join us, will you, at jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Become a member today. Also, Just Coffee, fair trade coffee, including the Majority Report blend. Go to justcoffee.coop. It's a co-op. They're fair trade, really good to their suppliers. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Justcoffee.coop. Emma is out today on ESPN this week. Do you know what she's doing? Some sports stuff?
I don't know, but last week, Thursday, you can check out me on ESPN, and I got to talk about basketball, which ESPN audience doesn't normally get exposed to because it's very football heavy. So check that out. Yeah, I'm sure Emma's going to do maybe a show tomorrow or Thursday.
Kid tested Politburo approved, says DeSantis lie can feature date corrections for Sam. DeSantis lie. Yeah, there you go.
When you said date corrections, I was thinking of like when you tell your date, it's Thai food, not Thai food. But.
Exactly. Left Reckoning.
Left Reckoning, actually, as we speak, interviews being conducted with David Griscom and presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. So check that out this evening. I'm excited to view it myself. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to support us in the postgame.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920 is the number. We will see you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.